Hey everyone.
Hey, hello. Hi everyone. We will be waiting for a few more minutes for a few folks to join, and then we can start. So, I think in the meantime, while people are joining, we can do a quick round of intros. So, I'm Sahil. I'm joining from the QuickNode side, and I work as the developer relations advocate at QuickNode. And I do a bunch of these kind of things where I educate people about all the chains we support, how to use blockchain technology, and of course how to use QuickNote products as well. And joining us today are XRPL Commons team, and from XRPL's team we have Luke with us. So Luke, if you would like to give us a quick introduction about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I work for XRPL Commons. I'm product director, solutions architect there. So my team's responsible for technical integration, and as Sahil, I do a lot of training, education around integrating the XRPL and all the related technology in into your product, into your solutions. And just a quick background on me is I was, um, I've been basically building web related technologies for a little over 25 years, and I also did a stunt as a hedge fund manager and for chief finance officer. So I've worn a lot of hats, and this latest adventure started about 3 years ago for me when I joined XRPL Commons to help adoption of the XRP ledger. So that's the short on me. And then I'm excited today for this talk because the XRPL EVM sidechain is a uh, really cool, awesome addition into our toolkit to address different use cases with more programmability in our the XRPL ecosystem. And so really excited to explore the how that works today with you guys, and specifically, QuickNode I think is a great tool to address some of the issues you might have as a dev when you're using the EVM sidechain. So
Got
there
it.
you go.
Thanks for that awesome introduction, Luke. So, I think I'm gonna start with the main question that we all know or we have been familiar with the main XRPL chain, which is already such a great chain built for native financial systems and have its own very fast consensus mechanism as well, right? And so the main thing I think on everyone's mind right now would be why this new XRPL EVM based sidechain. Of course, it's it's a very good value added thing that people can just build on EVM, because a lot of people in this whole ecosystem are very familiar with EVM based chains, EVM based technologies, or side toolings, as you may want to call it, SDKs, whatever. So we know on the base layer that the new EVM sidechain is based on Cosmos SDK, so that it has fast finality. And since it's EVM based, we can just deploy our Solidity smart contracts on this new ledger. And of course, it uses the XRP token as a native gas token, which we are very familiar with, all of us. So my main question would be that what's the main motivation apart from giving people a familiar ecosystem or a familiar chain to work with, which is EVM based chain? Apart from that, what was the main motivation behind launching this EVM based side chain? If you wanna, elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a relatively recent project in our space. I mean, to come in and create a side chain. I mean, we've had um you know, a linked chain. Like we've had a lot of different linked chains over the years, but I think to really understand the the advantage of an XRP, you know, an XRP based EVM chain. I mean, you know, you have to understand the XRPL is a very special, specific kind of ledger. I think what makes it so robust and unique and with its features is that it's a fixed function ledger. So like all of the features that you're using are essentially, you know, if you're coming from the EVM space, you can think of it as like one big smart contract that like is driving all the transactions, right? And so we have like all the different transaction types, and everybody's kind of using the same primitives at the layer one, right? And while it gives us this like tremendous efficiency and coordination capabilities, we don't have like fractioned decentralized exchanges and things like that, and we could do really cool things in terms of like routing swaps and payments and things like that. um it just it we you know we didn't have a programmability layer. Like a decision was made you know, early on to really sort of not go to that route with you know, additional sort of layers of execution and complexity in the you know, at the validator level. And so right there, that's just an opportunity to, you know, bringing that programmability is an opportunity of itself. And so, you know, there's efforts, there's thoughts to discussions to add some programmability to the layer one, but I just think, you know, with um, the quality of innovation in the EVM space, it would just sort of be a shame not to have a specific offering for EVM, you know, based projects. And then, you know, then the next step, and in terms of decisions, I think we're going to talk about, you know, some of the technical decisions that were made, you know, in designing this XRPL EVM chain. Then, you know, what follows is like, okay, great, we want to be able to deploy all the EVM based contracts and all of that. But we also want, you know, something that is compatible with the main chain as a sort of a settlement layer, or as a, you know, because that's where a lot of the you know, the value of the ecosystem is being, you know, is being settled. And so, you know, using the XRP as the gas, you know, token, you know, all the XRP on the EVM chain comes from the mainnet. You know, that's sort of a logical next step. And then, you know, having like, you know, 3 to 5 second finality is also like a really important coordinator, and you know, it allows us to tackle the same kind of use cases that the mainnet, and sort of enhance those use cases with programmability. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but I think like that's basically, it seemed like the time was right to, you know, bring, we have like you know, a little over 7 million accounts on the mainnet. Lots of XRP holders around the world, and sort of to it's just an opportunity to bring them some of the DeFi services that, you know, some of these services on on the EVM innovations on the EVM chains are really exciting, you know, for our community as well. So now there's
Got it.
a nice place to do that.
Got it. Got it. And since Luke, you already mentioned that the XRP we use on the EVM chain is from the mainnet. So,
Mhm.
from what I understand, it's via the Axelar bridging, which uses 1:1 collateralized XRP locked on mainnet and then unlocked on the EVM sidechain. So, right. So, there's
Yeah,
no
so
minting and burning in this process.
it's this philosophy that basically, you know, one of the major differentiators of the XRP ledger is that, you know, all the XRP in existence has already been created. Like it was created, it was never really minted in the sense, like it was just created at the inception of the chain, and
Hmm.
there is no minting mechanism. The XRP is, you know, the amount that was created is 100 billion XRP. That's fixed forever. um there is, you could argue there is, you know, some like very small destruction of XRP that's happening at every transaction that's going through, but it's just so marginal. Like it's like 17 million or something since the inception of the chain, which is like, you know, just a round, you know, very small rounding error. So when we wanted to bring, you know, XRP to the side chain, then you have this you know, now you have this dilemma. Like either you, you know, how do you get basically the XRP that was created? How do you get it over to the sidechain? And so there's all these different mechanisms that you could use, but I think the locking mechanism was the sort of the more philosophical mechanism, because that's how we can make sure, without modifying mainnet, that
Hmm.
we have, you know, we're never going to break that rule of never creating XRP again. And so if we had introduced a you know, a burn to mint kind of thing, then, you know, you'd have the potentially, you know, the risk that, you know, you need to update, you know, mainnet, and then you need to sort of synchronize all the, you know, it just introduces, I mean, you know, probably could have been solved as well to some extent, but, you know, the decision was made to sort of keep it simple and keep the mechanisms that's been keeping the chain, you know, sound and secure, for like over 14 years now, you know, operational.
Understood. 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 So since we're talking about decisions, Luke, so I would like to ask you a very fundamental question, that what was the decision making thinking which went behind when XRPL Commons chose QuickNode as the infrastructure partner? Or if you want to generalize this question, what does XRPL Common looks for in a infrastructure partner, which can be QuickNode, can be other partner as well? So what
Yeah,
are
I mean,
those criteria
I'm
you
happy
folks look
to.
for?
It's one of those questions where, you know, you're fetching for compliments, but I am happy to, to send a lot of compliments your way. I think, you know, you know, what I would say, you know, to start is that, when you operate in the blockchain space, and if you, you know, if you reach any significant size, you'll see very quickly that, you know, public endpoints to access data that you depend on is just a no-go. Like you can't rely on public access points. I mean, they're gated. They, you know, at any kind of scale, like, you know, anything else than a toy app, you're going to sort of start hitting limits in terms of, you know, the speed of data that you can get, and things you could do with the data. And so it follows that, you know, you either have a choice then is to run your own node, which is, you know, I mean, another infrastructure, you know, another piece of infrastructure you have to sort of add to your system, or, you know, find a provider that does this. And, you know, I mean, I think QuickNode has a, you know, an amazing reputation in running nodes for various ecosystems. And so I think it was, you know, sort of a natural choice, from our perspective. You know, I think you started your relationship with Ripple, and now we're sort of managing that relationship. But I think it just makes so much sense to have, you know, an offering where, you know, in a few clicks you can just set up a node, and then now you've de-risked, your access to the chain. You know, so you have to understand that if you're running your own node, it is your own relay. It's synchronized with the chain. It has the data of the chain that you can use, so you can get the data off. You can read data off the chain, and then you can also use it to transmit messages to the chain, send your transactions through, with, you know, your own privileged access. But really, the sending is sort of one thing, but it's the from an engineering point of view, the advantage is all about reading, right? It's all about
Yeah.
getting access to the data that you need in a timely manner. Um, and yeah, so, you know, any transaction that you're doing, because any transaction that you're doing, the whole point of the chain is to, you know, set a proof that you can read then forever. So, yeah. So yeah,
100%.
so yeah, and then, you know, in terms of, you were asking like more generally, like what we look for in infrastructure partners, partners in general. We look for people that we look for companies and groups that, you know, have, you know, a proven track record, that are, you know, you know, proficient in their own domains, you know, that have like, you know, you know, top level expertise, you know, that's kind of have standed the test of time to some extent, you know. Yeah, and of course, I mean, of course, the first thing is, of strategic value to builders, where it's not something, it saves you time. You go in and you do a 2-click deploy, and now you've solved, one of the major pain points of deploying and maintaining apps on a blockchain. You don't have to do this on your own, and manage your own infrastructure and do all that. That's a huge gain of time.
100%, and especially when you want to scale. And as Luke mentioned, uh, writing is normally not the issue, but reading is. And if you're reading huge amount of data across a range of blocks, it can be really a pain in the ass to run your own infrastructure, manage it, etc., etc. So that being said, I would just like to plug a small plug for QuickNode, that if you want to get started with the XRPL Mainnet or XRPL EVM, you can do it. Like, you can do it even right now. Just sign up for a QuickNode account and create those XRPL endpoints for mainnet or even EVM. You'll have to create two separate ones for them, and then you can just start getting data from both the ledgers or both the chains. And we support full JSON RPC spec for both the chains, so you will be good there. And then you can get extra added security features as well, like JWT or the referral authentication, etc., etc. I won't speak a lot about them. You can check all of these features and all of the security measures which you can use to secure your endpoints in the documentation. But we are here to talk about more. We are here to talk more about XRPL. Sorry, I X just popped a message saying that you will need to unmute your mic. So I just thought for a second that was I even speaking for this entire time? So, yeah,
You've been notified. You've
yeah,
been
exactly.
notified.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was about it. So Luke, since you work with the solutions team, I'm sure you must be very hands on with all the builders who are building in the ecosystem, right? So I wanted to get a sense of what's the state of the ecosystem today, or where the momentum is going today, especially in the XRPL community, in the XRPL ecosystem. Where are you seeing the most amount of builders building? Like, it can be a vertical, it can be a certain use case. What do you think that is?
So I mean, in the ecosystem in general, and I mean, there is, so we run an incubator program, and sort of, and we also address a lot of the, we have get a lot of inbound, from teams that are building. And I can tell you there is, there's a lot of different, it's a very wide range of people that are building, from very specific, DeFi solutions all the way to, social impact solutions and things like that. Um, but the things that I think are really exciting and happening right now are the, all the things around DeFi. And so, of course, like the whole, novel lending protocols, the bringing, derivatives on chain. Of course, the um, one of the main things about, DeFi is bringing yield. So we have, like,
Yes.
we have a lot of XRP holders that have been sort of, that it's been hard to get any meaningful yield on your XRP. Yeah, and so that's an opportunity we're really, really excited about, is like bringing, bringing these services, these offerings for our XRP holders. And there's a lot of XRP holders out there, and so those are, I think, like the most compelling sort of use cases. And then I'm individually excited also about
Hmm.
a project called Axiom. It's bringing, you know prediction markets, which I think is a space that has like a lot of potential, to differentiate or to help with, because there's all this talk about bringing like real world assets on chain and all of that, and of course we want all of that. We want to be able to manipulate those assets on chain. But I think these protocols, I'm excited about things that sort of bring also some kind of novelty, and and I
Got it.
think the signals and the value that you can create with prediction markets is exciting as well. So on top of everything else, this is sort of more of a
Got
one more thing. But yeah, those
got it.
those are sort of the main use cases.
Got it. And look, apart from Axiom, are you seeing any other novel XRPL native projects or teams who are building XRPL native? Something which is, only possible on this combination of XRP plus XRP sidechain EVM combo?
Um, well, I mean, it's an interesting question because like I mean, I think it's the way to look at it is an expansion of existing projects. Like the EVM
Okay.
just allows us to expand the capabilities of existing projects. So if you had a project
Hmm.
on the mainnet, now all of a sudden, you're one bridge away from being able to use some of these programmability features. And so that means you could have sort of smart NFTs or smart, these things sort of sound like not that exotic in the EVM space, but for XRPL,
Yes.
that's pretty cool,
Yeah.
And so,
True.
it's very it's very, how can I say this? It's very specific and niche probably sometimes, but that's where there's a lot of just interesting things happening innovation wise. Yeah, so you could probably do all all of the things on a programmable chain, but you have to do them
Hmm.
from scratch. The advantage
Yeah.
of having a chain where all the functions are already built in and audited and all of that is that you can leverage that. It's like when you're using a framework and you're programming. I mean, you don't want to program everything from scratch. You like to start with sensible defaults and just get doing the thing that's of interest to you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel to make the thing work. And so that's what I think is the main value proposition of the XRPL, is this just ability to just get started. You just point first to a single, your app to a single endpoint and just get started. You don't have to go through all of the motions to get a production grade app up and running. You don't have to go through publishing code and all of that. And so you can
Mm-hmm.
leverage that and then do the small part that's a differentiator for you, the thing that absolutely needs programmability. You can then do that on the EVM sidechain.
Got it. And look, on the point of not having to reinvent the
Yeah.
wheel from scratch, do you think there are any differences on XRPL EVM than your standard EVM? Because there are few EVM chains out there where you would have specific opcodes which are just specific to that EVM chain. So that a lot of times people who just want to take their Solidity smart contracts and deploy on that EVM chain, which has those special opcodes, they'll have to sometimes make few changes here and there. So is there anything like that in XRPL EVM, or people can just bring their Solidity code and deploy it as it is on XRPL EVM?
Well,
What's the case
yeah, I
here?
think, I mean, from a technical design point of view, decisions, those decisions that were made were made to maximize compatibility. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, we've seen a few teams, but I've never seen it be an issue. And we run some of these. When we run our trainings, we run. You're basically using all the same tooling, and then we have people come into our trainings with their own app or whatever, and it's just literally like you change an endpoint and you have to deploy your smart contract and do the same motions as you would do on any EVM chain. And we've seen sort of a high success there, like really no particular gotchas. The only thing I would
Hmm.
say is that but this is sort of the same thing for all EVM chains out there, is if you have a more evolved advanced protocol that relies on other protocols to exist, Like if you need a Uniswap, whatever V3 or whatever to be on chain, like you're going to, or or Morpho, whatever, you're going to have to, you're going to have to wait for those guys to be there. Like your product won't work, out of the box because the protocol's not there. Those protocols aren't there. And so that's, I think, the major thing that you need to look at, and probably the most, difficult thing to navigate. But, we're, that's what we're here for. We're happy to help you sort of navigate that, and tell you what's opportune and what's sort of still missing. And then sometimes when those big players or those protocols that people rely on aren't around, there's a space, also there's an opportunity to maybe come and take their place, if they haven't, if it's not like their priority to deploy on this specific EVM. And what I'm saying is true for all EVMs.
Yeah, 100%. Um, so on that, since we're talking about different kinds of chain and a lot of EVMs, this reminds me of one of the native feature the XRPL EVM sidechain has, which is the interoperability feature.
Mm.
I've read that it has native support for IBC, the Inter Blockchain Communication Protocol. So what does this mean for builders and core cross-chain liquidity? Is this just limited to the XRPL mainnet and XRPL EVM sidechain, or is it far beyond that?
Well, so it's a, it uses the Cosmos SDK, and so it has all of those features, kind of, the IBC features and all of that built in. Then the question is, is that the main bridging mechanism that's used? And I think the main mechanism that's used today is Axelar, and Axelar has
Mhm.
this sort of advantage of already, like, being integrated and connected to, dozens of other chains apart from the XRPL, mainnet. And so I would say that that's, it is the XRPL EVM chain is very well equipped in terms of interoperating with other chains, because it sort of has, you know several several ways, and several, all bridges aren't created equal. It's
Yes,
very
yes.
difficult to bridge value from one chain to another. You have to remember that these are basically, completely independent systems of record, and they need to represent value from the other system, each other, at the same time, and be, in sync. And actually transferring value from one chain to another, if you don't have native capability for representing assets in another chain, and sort of, securing those interdependencies, what you
Mhm.
end up needing to do is actually creating another blockchain just to do the bridging. And we can get into that. It's a, really fascinating subject. But the what it comes down to is you actually need a chain. Not only do you need a chain, because of the consensus mechanisms, and making sure that, no one person, or there's no one central, point of failure, and all of that. But then you also need that chain to itself, like, carry enough weight, because, if the chain is too small compared to the value that it's bridging, then, there's all sorts of, there's, new vectors of attack that come into play, where you can take over the bridging chain to take ownership of the assets. So it's not that simple, but I'm simplifying a little bit. But um,
Mhm.
there is, let me just say, there's a lot of thought that went into how to actually bridge value from one chain to another, and it's usually doesn't have to do only with what technical capability is available. Like, it also has to do with counterparty risk, and just making sure that the structure of the bridging is solid.
100%. And I bet the limited value of or the limited supply of XRP just doesn't make this process easier.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I don't think that's the, I don't think that's the, and I, that's not, maybe not how it say it. Like, it's limited. I mean, yeah, you can't just come in and create things. You can't create XRP on the sidechain. But I don't think that's necessarily the limiting factor. It's just I think the problem is the real problem is that the XRP is worth so much, and so that
Yes,
basically, in order to
true.
bridge meaningful value from one chain to another, then all of a sudden the infrastructure you need is colossal, and so
Hmm.
that's we've definitely had a lot of a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversations, and a lot of growing pains around that. How do we actually do this in a way where we're ambitious? The infrastructure is sized, for this ambitious goal. And I think we're there right now. I think like we've managed to sort of, and then, we'll maybe it'll be so successful we'll have even more problems, but usually those are good problems.
Understood. So, um, I guess I just have one last question before we can move into, Q&A, and we can start taking questions from audience.
Yeah.
I also have a few questions from my side. Luke, so what do you think is next on the roadmap for the XRPL EVM team or XRPL in general? Where do you see the ecosystem moving towards by the lens of a XRPL Foundation or XRPL Chains team?
Um,
Or where do you folks want it to move, in which direction?
So, I mean, I was. It's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking, we have just so many new features that are coming online, like, and then I was thinking, while I was thinking that, I was thinking, well, actually, it is such a unique time in software development, and I'm sure as your team, develops these new features, and you felt it too. Like, it's the last few months have just been like it felt like this really huge accelerator. But anyway, the point is, we have a lot of new amendments on mainnet that are sort of coming online around just deeper infrastructure around managing real world assets for really large institutional use cases. In some cases, so I mentioned earlier, we have one of the oldest dexes in the ecosystem.
Hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
we didn't call it a dex. We just called it the central limit order book, and for years, and we didn't, before dexes were dex, were um, but the and everybody is operating on the same dex. Okay, it's not like
Yeah.
it's not fractured like in an EVM ecosystem where each deck has its own smart contract and so on and so forth. And so, but so that's great because everybody shares the same liquidity and all that. But there are some use cases, especially for institutional use cases, where you want to be permissioned. You want to have the capability of preventing certain users from interacting with the chain, with your contracts, essentially, with your tokens. And so anyway, so there's a so usually features are sort of driven by like high demand in the XRPL ecosystem. We don't kind of do experimental features too much. I mean, there's few features that I would qualify as experimentals in the history of amendments that have ever been proposed. Usually, it's people really need this to bring in a lot of users and use cases, and so permission dexes and permission domains in general are sort of really exciting. We have native lending protocols that are coming online, and there seems to be a little bit of an acceleration in terms of the feature set that's being brought on to the XRPL. That was a long-winded way of saying, like in the rest of the software space, things are accelerating and we're adding more features. And but I think that doesn't take away. I mentioned, these features of the mainnet, and these I think are really good reasons to sort of take another look. If you've taken a look at the XRPL a few years ago and you look at it today, you'd be like, oh, okay, like now actually, the design space is much larger. I mean, the things you can do
Yes.
in terms of we have a new multi-purpose token and things that sort of make a lot of sense as like engineering building blocks that I think you want to have a look at today. But I think that doesn't take away from from our discussion today, which is the sort of the your products around the EVM sidechain to some extent, and these are new offerings, right, that you guys have around the EVM sidechain, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I think that there's the design space there has always been quite large, and I think there's all that's where the frontier innovation is happening, and so I think that would be like the my my kind of conclusion
Got
there
it.
is like that's where we go. And actually, I mean, I would turn a question to you, which is like you see into all these other chains, like what where do you see like the pull from your users and your devs, and who tends to be using these instances more aggressively? I mean, I've seen a lot of more like startups and kind of getting up and running kind of thing, and then sort of early scaling. But I'm sort of curious how you see that landscape of customers and users.
So in terms of if we are speaking about users, we see on our platform, it's all across the place, from your individual devs who are just getting started to very early stage startups to even medium scale startups, or even large enterprises like Coinbases of the world and or OpenSeas of the world, or even Fireblocks and things like that. So the thing is that each and every company at every level needs data from the blockchain, which is fast and robust, right? So it just it just is very wide. The user base is very wide. Every touch point or every size of user would need that data. But if you talk about where we are seeing the pull in terms of use cases, you mentioned it already. Prediction markets is one of the very hot use cases these days. I was recently judging Hackathon's project, and at least 90% of those projects in the submissions were either related to prediction markets or something to do
Hmm.
with AI agents doing something with those prediction markets. So it was a combination of these two things: AI agents and prediction markets. AI agents doing trades on prediction markets, or AI agents doing perps trade or even spot trade. So yeah,
Oh my God,
that's
that's the
where
elephant in
everything.
the room. Like I didn't even mention all the AI use cases, but yeah, really really exciting for the X402 protocol, and what that unlocks. Yeah.
100%. And now that software development has become, more accessible to even wider audience, not just developers, I think we will be seeing a lot more creative use cases. Because developers, we are all just like echo chambers. We just know of specific use cases, or we just do things around specific things. But now that this entire space is much more accessible to wider audience with so many great tools, I think we are going to see much more novel use cases as well. So,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
yeah.
When you and if you I mean, if I can ask, maybe I'll be the first question from the audience. What are sort of the new the new services or the new offerings that you guys are have just released, or are working on or thinking about?
Yeah. So one of the very exciting tool which we offer, which I personally very much like, it's not a new one, but it's called streams.
Oh
So basically, in RPC you poll data and get the data, but with streams it's a push based mechanism. So you can just set up a stream for a particular data, and you can even put filter on server side. So whenever you are working with RPCs, you get the data, and then you filter it on your end, which is client side. But with streams, you can do it entirely on the server side and then push the data in whatever data solution you want. So in this case, in this scenario, what happens is you skip the entire pipeline part, where with the RPCs you set up everything, you do the data filtration part on your end, and then you push the data to whatever solution you want. where or whatever data storage solution you have.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with streams, you just skip this entire pipeline and everything happens automatically. You just get the data, you set it up once, and you keep on getting the data. So that's what streams is. And since we talked a little bit about AI agents, we recently launched support for X402. So you can technically you can have your AI agent sign up for QuickNode and start interacting with blockchain data, like all by
Oh,
itself.
cool. Like the
It
agent
doesn't.
can buy itself a quick note.
Yeah, it can
That's
just
awesome.
basically
That's
it can just basically
awesome.
play for it can just basically pay for credits,
Yeah.
QuickNote credits with USDC, and then it can just start sending blockchain request, like on-chain requests. Like it can start getting data, and once the credits are acquired by AI agent, it can access data across multiple blockchains, whatever we support. Not just it's not just limited to one chain.
Right. That's so awesome. Wow, I didn't realize that. Wow, kudos to you. That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah.
We've used the streaming feature, and the streaming feature is exactly what you need. It's like it's one of those features you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. You might not have you think of it, when you get started, but then you're like, okay, yeah, of course, this is exactly, I'm not interested in all the other data. All I'm interested in is my own data, and you just get that out of the system directly. It's great.
Yeah, 100%. And for example, with the new sidechain, like EVM sidechain, XRPL EVM sidechain, which has block timings of 3 to 3.5 seconds. Imagine the amount of data you pull with RPCs if you are just using RPCs.
I know
It
it's
can be
insane.
so much data within few minutes. But with streams, you can filter and you can just get a subset of data which is just valuable to you, and then you save on a lot of processing on your end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep, yep.
Can you do you
And
know what indexing or what kind of technology you're using under the hood? Is this all something you've developed all in house, or are you leveraging some other
no,
tools or?
so yeah, so most of it is in-house proprietary tech built by QuickNode
Mhm.
engineers, and this is not something new, but the robust infrastructure or backend which supports our RPC's backend, which is the global infrastructure, that is what powers streams as well. So streams is not truly indexed data, but something which you get live from chain as well. So you do not have to worry about even freshness of the data.
Okay, so it's filtered on the fly. Yeah, I get it. Okay,
Yes, yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. But that
Thanks for
being
that.
said,
I took
since
advantage of
you
my position as a speaker to ask all my questions, but we can open it up. I don't know.
yeah, 100%. But just wanted to mention one last thing. So that
Yeah.
since you mentioned indexing, we have something new in works. So, if people require, fast access to index data, they can either DM me or DM the main QuickNote account. And we do have something in works for that area, which is very interesting. You can basically build your analytic dashboards, and they basically build your trading terminals with just few lines of codes, queries, etc. You do not even need to index the data on your end. You can just make a query and get the data very fast. And this is I'm talking about the entire chain's data right from the genesis, not just the live data. So we do have something in
Wow,
works
that
for
sounds
that.
really cool.
So
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
think we can explain this a little bit because the why is it so important to index data? It's because the data that's being written on any blockchain is being written sequentially and in a very specific way,
Yes.
right? We're creating all these blocks, and
Yes.
so when you're following
So
what happened at the last
100%.
yeah at the last ledger, you can get that data very quickly, and then usually chains themselves have sort of one way to index the data so you can get at it. But if you're looking for, let's say, like the entire history of a single account, all the transactions that happen for that account, for instance, it might take a really long time because you're going to have to like scan the entire blockchain and get all the data back. And so, if your
100%.
user is, wants to know what his transactions were, it's that query. If you're going directly to the chain, you're going to make that user wait a very long time. And so yeah, it's a very
100%.
simple example of why you would want to use an index, because the index, has your own keys and your own. So for instance, in this case, it would be, the account and the transaction history. And you can just save that data in a way where you can serve your customer, and he doesn't have to wait, for that data. You're taking data off the chain, and then you're organizing it in a way that your users can consume very quickly and very easily and in a timely manner inside your app. And so that's why indexing is so critical in blockchain, and that's why having these are the motions that all developers go through. Like, how can I reliably
Yeah.
connect to the chain, and then how can I get a view, an aggregate view of my own objects in a really timely manner, so that I can surface it for my customers. So it's dashboards, but any kind of UI that kind of shows like what happened or history or anything like that needs to be driven by indexing. And so having a native offering that just basically does all of that for you just saves you a ton of time not having to reinvent the wheel. So
100%. 100%. I always like to think of this as the blockchain data flow as unlimited flow of water. So,
right.
so for example, like you just if you just need latest blocks data, you just fill a small cup, and then you are just fine with that. You can make coffee with it, you can make tea with it, whatever. You can cook with it. But if you need, a lot more data than that, let's say you need 1,000 blocks in the past, or 10,000 blocks in the past, or 100K blocks in the past, you will need a much more bigger vessel to store that water in, and
I
that
can
can be a
appreciate
hassle
that.
for you.
I can appreciate that because the full history is over 30 terabytes in the XRPL.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a lot of
Yeah.
it's a lot of buckets needed.
100%. And then on top of that, you even have to manage those buckets so that the data doesn't spill over those buckets,
Exactly.
or the water doesn't go stale, or how do you even make sure that you have arranged the buckets in a specific order? So that's a lot of things.
So anyway,
So
so that
when
was a
it
bit of a rabbit hole, but I think it's useful to understand the context of that product. So great going on that. That's cool. Should we open the floor maybe to some questions?
Yes, yes, we can definitely open the floor to some questions. So, if anyone from the audience member has any question for either me or Luke from the XRPL Commons team, feel free to raise your hands, and we should be able to bring you up on the stage to speak. So in the meantime, Luke, if I may, I have two questions from my side as well
Sure.
for
Oh,
the
sure, sure.
Q&A section. I know I have been asking questions throughout the time, but still, I saved two for the Q&A section. So the first one would be that if you had to take a bet on one category, it can be DeFi, gaming. I know you already mentioned RWA, or institutional finances. What's that one thing you think that should define XRPL EVM in 2026?
Oof. I don't know. That's a tough one. I think that might be one for who's calling me. Um, I think that might be one for someone else in my team, for Modelia or something. But because I think just picking one is difficult.
Okay.
Um, I mentioned a
What's
few earlier.
your
I-
favorite one?
Yeah,
What's your favorite? What would you like to see personally?
something that's not in the works that I'm not aware of, or is in the works that I would like to see. I mean, I'm super. I mean, I'm super. I've been building apps for a few decades now, and I've never been so excited about what we can build in the technology, and about AI. And so I think like anything that has to do with like sort of bringing this whole new category of users, I think is
Hmm.
really really interesting. Also because I think it's um, you know, we build these blockchains with the idea of sort of building something new, building a new sort of new world order to some extent. I mean, this is, you know, the origin. I know XRPL has a more institutional kind of feel to it, and you know, but it's you know, at the core, these blockchains were built for, you know, build, you know, from the margins, you know, towards the center kind of thing. And I think like the you know, the capabilities that have been released in open source and models that have been released in open source alone are just, you know, just give us huge agency, give individual builders, you know, huge agency. And
Yes.
I'm really excited to see what people, how that trickles down and what people build from those, you know, open source, that open source community, which I think, you know, XRPL is very much, you know, in that idea of you know, having, you know, open source software and giving people tools so that they can, you know, have their own sovereignty, you know. And so sovereignty in the AI world, in the AI space, I think is for me, that's the most one of the most exciting things that's happening. Um, and you know, that's not to say that you know, I don't love like DeFi and all you know, all the exciting things that we're creating there. I think a lot of it is sort of taking over, you know, bringing over things that have been done in traditional finance and sort of giving them even sort of an, you know, an accelerator and a, you know, a different kind of angle. And that goes, to me, that goes all the way to the poly markets and the, you know, prediction markets, that where I think is that the most interesting thing there is not necessarily, you know, betting on you know, Apple stock, or you know, because I think that's very well served with, you know, sort of TradFi, even though it's cool to be able to
Mhm.
do that on chain. But I think where it's even more interesting is at the fringes of the new type of information that's being created, you know, by these prediction markets, where you know, you can literally, you know, any outcome you can sort of, you know, start to have people reason about and put a financial incentive behind it. And so then you get just
100.
really good information on that specific question topic. And so yeah, hard to it's hard to pinpoint
100%.
one specific thing, to be honest, is and a bit frustrating, and you know, but so that's those are the, I think those are the kind of two angles that
Got
I'm most excited.
got it. Got it. Got it. And on prediction markets too, I mean, it's we are at this point that to some extent these prediction markets are even sources of news for a lot of people,
Sure.
not just, you know, not just gambling platforms or betting platforms, but sources of news for people to some extent, which is, you know, interesting in a way. Like, you know, interesting to see how we are evolving, you know, as a society. to to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's incredible what can happen when you put financial incentives behind a, you know, a simple question. You
Right?
know,
Yes.
the quality of the information you get, like, you know, I think everybody has in mind like the polling, you know, in the last few years since we've had these prediction markets, like polling has been, you know, really come under you know, competitive pressure, I would argue, from, you know, compare outcomes from prediction markets versus outcomes from polling, you know. So I think
Yes.
that, you know, that's super interesting. And you know, you can I have a financial background, you know, market finance, and so, you know, for me, speculation is not necessarily a bad word, but you know, a lot of people sort of, you know, say, oh, it's just speculation, but the I think the truth is a little more nuanced. It's not just betting. What it is being able to transfer risk. And so if you have a risk on a certain type of outcome, and you can use these prediction markets to transfer the risk to someone else that wants that risk, because you know, my risk is maybe your, you know, you know, your security, you know. And so being able to manipulate risk and transfer risk is a very powerful tool to build, you know, to build a thing in an uncertain world. You know, we're you know, since we sent you know, sailboats across the ocean, you know, we've had to deal with risk. You know, who's going to take on, you know, paying the crew and all the materials to build a boat, to build a ship, to go and, you know, across the ocean in this uncertain, you know, You know, it's going to come. Is it going to come back next year with the goods, or is it going to sink? You know, and so you know, ever since we had to sort of deal with that uncertainty, managing risk has been, you know, a really powerful tool. And so now today, you know, in this day and age, well, it's a completely different set of problems, but we still have, you know, and technology, but we still have, you know, managing these, you know, these tools to manage this new kind of, you know, new tools to manage risk, which I think is
Yeah.
creates a tremendous value.
Yeah, 100%. And now we even have these AI agents who are like our commanders who can go onto those voyages for us. Sure, they can make losses for us, but yeah, we can learn a lot more, and we can learn a lot more new things in that way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, explorers, the new explorers, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I think I think you're exactly right. Like the curiosity, our curiosity has just, you know, had a huge boost, you know, has a huge ally now in these tools. We can go and explore things that were just not possible. Not possible because of time sometimes, but you know, not possible just even given our capabilities. I mean, you know, these tools
100%.
are more
100%.
capable than we are in the digital space, and so but yeah, so it's a fascinating time to be building.
100%. So, Luke, I think there was a question from one of the audience members. So, let me check if we can bring them up to
Sure.
speak.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Hi there.
So today, there was a lot of mentions of data and stuff. So maybe Luke can answer this. My question is regarding data. So when an XRPL indexer and let's say like an RPC node, they don't match because one is lagging. Which one should we trust as the source of truth? And if you can answer that, like, what's your recommended way to like reconcile and resync app state after that happens?
Um, Luke, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, go. I mean, I'm sure you can answer it more better than I could. I mean, you know, yeah, I'll complete your answer
Um,
if I don't find it
got
satisfactory,
it.
so we can test
I
your knowledge.
I can give a yeah, I can give a high level overview that if in terms of the freshness of data, or the most freshest data, you will always have to go with RPCs because they are the ones who take data directly from the live blockchain nodes, whereas indexes are the ones which has data stored in them. So there has to be a thing like RPC which sits between that indexer or indexed data and the live blockchain node, where it pulls the data and then it stores in the index, and then you as a user can pull from that index. Whereas if you are pulling directly from RPCs, you are basically making your communication directly with the live blockchain node and getting the freshest data. So that's what my answer is. Luke, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is a form of race condition. You know, you're saying like I have these two data sources, and like one is ahead of the other. How, you know, how do I know which one to trust? Well, I guess it depends on your use case. If you're looking for, you know, the very latest price signal, for instance, on something, your question kind of implies that you're not looking at the ledger sequence, and you're not trying to you know, have you know, you're trying to get some information that you're going to act on, and so that's what I'm gathering from your question, Mike. I hope I'm not misinterpreting that. But in that sense, that then probably you want to listen to you want to get the most up to date data, even if it's out of sync with the you know, the other one, because you know, and the right way to do that would be to look at, to have some kind of indication of the ledger sequence that is being used, because the blockchains advance in order and sequence, so you could always know like what the latest, you know, even an endpoint might be providing data that's that might seem more up to date, but it isn't, or something. It sort of depends on the. But looking at the ledger sequence and comparing the ledger sequence, and then if you're doing things like arbitrage and things like that, then you need to sort of reconcile the two sequences with a clock, to know when those sequences are and were, and like if there's for instance, an arbitrage opportunity if you're doing trading or things like that. But happy to explore your specific use case if you want to share more about it offline, or you can, our DMs are open and you can reach out to me. Happy to talk about the specifics.
Got it. Thank you. That answers my question. And RPCs are like the closest to the live blockchain node,
Right.
therefore they should be treated that way. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you're gonna get the least latency there for sure.
Thanks, Mike. I think, Luke, we have another question, so we'll try to bring them up. All right. It looks like it's from Death Ranger. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you guys very much for allowing me to come up and hosting this space today. It's been information packed, and I love you guys all already. So it's always great to get to listen to everybody on the speaker panel. I actually had a thought about you had mentioned agentic payments earlier, right? And something that popped to my mind was, something recently we've had being worked on with the Common Prefix team, like the formal verification that's being done for the network. And thinking about like agentic payments, would this formal verification that's occurring make it easier to have like plug and play agents that would be able to interact with the ledger and all of the different functionalities that the ledger has to offer?
I think the way to think about formal verification is it's just it's an additional guarantee that the protocol is sound and solid. So it's like it has more to do with like think about like a professional architect like comes in and looks at and inspects the foundation of a house, and validates that the math on the structure, the infrastructure, the beams and the overall the foundations and the way the walls were built and the roof was put together like is sound and solid, and is within the expected range of potential. So I think formal proofs are sort of a that effort is really to sort of bring a whole nother layer of trust to the protocol itself. And but so fundamentally, I think that it increases the value of all of the protocols, all of the things that come and build on top of the fund, the baseline protocol. And so, I do think that there is a huge thing to be there's a huge design space that's still that's to be explored with these sort of agentic beings, or artificial systems that we're building that have these they need to be running. They need verified data, and they need to be they one of the things I would say about like agentic systems is they thrive on robust infrastructure. So for instance, if you're using agents for code today, like look at how much more you're using GitHub and infrastructure like that. You're using like more and more of the features. You're using issues, you're using pull requests, you're using all the different features of. And why? It's because the fundamentally Git is such a strong infrastructure. Another example of that is like the Linux permission system, which is being like really, really put to the test with like, this is a very, very recent thing, like all the claws, open claw and all that stuff, nano claw and all that stuff. They make use of the file system, the operating system permission systems. And, this is something that we've had, but it's just such a robust building block and now agentic systems can use these building blocks to their full extent. And so it's the same thing with blockchains. If blockchains are more robust, it's just helpful. It's just helpful overall, to answer your question. But fundamentally, that's why these agentic systems, that are starting to manipulate money and move value around, um, are fundamentally, very good match with, the blockchain infrastructure is a very solid piece of infrastructure for them.
That was a great response. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for the kind words.
So looks like, Luke, that was it. We do not have any other questions from anyone else. So I think that brings us towards the end of the space, Luke. And do you want to share where people can go to start building on XRPL and XRPL EVM? For
Um, yeah, I mean, I hate to share links and things, but like, you can find resources on, uh, yeah, why don't we share links on the in the comments to this post, and then we'll give you access to
yeah,
that. But there's dedicated resources for that, for all forms, not just developers, but also users, and you can find your own path through the. And then, of course, we run trainings at XRPL Commons. So come and join one of our trainings. It's a ton of fun. We spend 2 days jamming on all these technologies, and it's a lot of fun. Live events,
got it.
if you're into that thing, I would highly recommend live events, in addition to all the async stuff you can use. How about your side? Are you
100%.
is there a do you guys have specific QuickNode events or resources or things?
We do have a extensive documentation page, and we do create a lot of guides as well. So you can just so anyone who wants to start building can just go to the docs section of QuickNode and find XRPL ledger and XRPL EVM documentation there to get started with XRPL and XRPL EVM. Then, if anyone has any questions related to QuickNode or even XRPL, feel free to ask them in our Discord, which is already linked in the comments, or you can just DM me as well. We will be more than happy to help you get started on XRPL and XRPL EVM. Then I think you folks should be able to find some of the QuickNote team members at ETHCC, which is coming up soon. And I think XRPL team will also be there
Yeah, well,
around the
I'm very
Paris
lucky to be
blockchain
there.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, in Cannes.
All right. So if any of you want to meet up with the XRPL team, make sure to look out for them at Paris Blockchain Week or even in ETHCC cons.
Awesome. Thanks for the great conversation today. Um, and yeah, I wish you your day's starting, my day's ending, but have a great day. Have a great day, everyone, wherever you are. Um,
Thank
have fun
yeah,
with.
I mean, thank you so much, Luke, for joining us. And I think it was a really great and insightful conversation for all of us, for me as well, personally. So really appreciate you joining, and thank you so much, XRPL Comms team as well.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Very appreciated and reciprocated. So thank you.
100%. Looking forward to do more things with you folks.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. All right. Thanks, Luke.
Bye bye.
You have a good evening
Good evening,
and
everyone.
see you soon. Bye bye.